Welcome back to the She Does This podcast. I'm Jordy Lucas, and this week you're listening to the #1 entertainment news show on Apple Podcasts. Can you believe it? I cannot. I got an email this week that we were #1 entertainment news show, and I had to reread it a few times. I was absolutely blown away. The timing of this, I can't explain to you how incredible the timing is. I was hit with a truckload of mum guilt on Monday, and it really knocked me for a six. I'm not gonna lie. It just hit me that I might not ever get where I want to be in my career. For those of you who aren't aware, media and the entertainment industry is incredibly cutthroat, incredibly competitive, and sometimes talent and hard work, well, most of the time talent and hard work isn't enough. And as I was driving away, I'd left Evie, my daughter, with my parents, and I was driving away, and it just hit me that I may never get where I want to be career-wise. And was the guilt that I feel when I drive away from my daughter ever going to be worth it? Was it going to pay off? Am I going to be able to provide for her the way I want to? It just really hit me, and I felt so flat for the rest of the day, and I spoke to my mum about it, and she gave me some words of encouragement, but this feeling of just flatness really stuck with me. And then the very next day, I get this email that we were #1. And I try not to get caught up in numbers and statistics and all that sort of stuff, but it was the validation that I needed. And I'm not really into signs from the universe, but I'm going to take that as a sign that I'm on the right track. Being #1 as an independent podcast, an independent outlet, is huge. It's incredibly difficult when you don't have, a team around you, a large team around you that a big media outlet does to push your podcast. So it's hard work, but this was the validation that I needed, that I'm on the right track and that people obviously are taking notice and listening, and I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful. So from me and the very small team of She Does This, I just wanted to say a huge thank you for listening and your support. It is so appreciated. On the site this week, a young mum shares the sudden scary wake-up call that made her realise she had to commit to managing her chronic health condition. Resident writer Amy Ruffle also explores the idea of constant happiness and why we have to allow ourselves to feel all the feelings. This week's guest, Pru Corrigan, is the founder and CEO of One Daydream PR. Now, they have looked after the PR for small players like Mercedes-Benz, Sephora, Jagged, The Body Shop, Marc Jacobs Beauty, and Pru is the leader of this incredible agency. She also heads up the talent division of the business, and she's the founder of Batch & Co., which is an alcoholic spritz collection. There's really not much she can't do. I've admired her career for a long time now, so I was so excited to have her on the podcast. Here's my chat with Pru Corrigan. Pru, thank you so much for joining us. This is our third take on an intro because technology has just not wanted us to be on a podcast together, apparently.
Jordy, I know it is. At least we're laughing about it.
I know. Tell me how 2021 has kicked off for you as a business owner in PR.
Yeah, 2021 has been interesting. I think January certainly saw the start of sort of brands moving again when it came to PR strategies and, spending some dollars and feeling confident again. But I think it's still got a long way to go. We've just touched the sides. We're getting used to being next to people at events as well. So that's something that's sort of new for 2021 as well. But I feel confident for the end of the year. I think we're really lucky to live here in Australia at the moment and compared to the rest of the world. And, hopefully all PR agencies can sort of be back up and going. And I think, like, looking at what last year brought, PR now is really, really important to have in your marketing plan. So hopefully there's lots of work for everyone to go around for 2021.
So we're going to talk all about the world of PR, which is a world that I find fascinating. But can you tell us a bit about how you almost had a career in acting?
Yes, I started acting many, many moons ago, sort of when I was at school. So I love drama and sort of traveled through doing that at school, and then left and got into amateur theatre. And in Melbourne in those days, amateur theatre was pretty good back in the 90s. And landed a gig at the Heidelberg Theatre Company, which was a big amateur theatre company back then. And then literally within a week of sort of landing that role after working so hard, you know what it's like with acting, it's just relentless, and lots of auditions and lots of training and whatnot. And within a week of landing the role, I was actually offered a role at Sportsgirl head office as marketing coordinator. And my mum said, well, I'm not going to support an unpaid actress, so I suggest you go and get a job. And in those days, obviously, amateur theatre was not paid for, obviously. And it was a huge commitment too. I mean, there were rehearsals morning and night, and it was pretty full on. And, I still think back to those days because I talk about people living their dreams every day. And for me, I didn't live my dream back then at the age of, 18, 19. So I always sort of wonder what life would have looked like if I did take that path. But no, I ended up hitting the Sportsgirl train and stayed there for 6.5 years and worked with the team that really turned that brand around. And I guess sort of started working behind the scenes versus, in front of the scenes. And I guess it's led to where I am today.
And we'll talk all about how you sort of manage and mold talent now. Sportsgirl, such an iconic brand, and was a real staple of mine. I feel like I'm 29 now. I feel like I'm too old for Sportsgirl now. But in my early
You're never
20s,
too old.
I would be in Sportsgirl all the time. What was the brand messaging for Sportsgirl that you were really driving home in terms of the PR for that brand?
Yeah, the tagline was "Make your own way there," and I guess in the early 2000s, that was very much a new way for women to think, for young girls to think about making their own way there. We were definitely seeing an emergence of young girls doing it their own way, and there was huge opportunity within the Sportsgirl team as a woman to really look at retail as being a career. And that was part of our PR messaging, probably from an internal perspective, but also if you're looking at it from the outside, it was to be seen that if you were working in retail, you could actually take it as a serious job. And that wasn't around. I think you sort of did it if you were 16, 17, you worked part-time in retail. So that was a huge message of what we did with Sportsgirl. And then it was just really about in the campaigns, like I look back and, we had campaigns like shopping is better than sex, and which was so taboo back then. But we said, well, we're not saying have sex. We're just saying it's better than sex, We had two girls kissing, which was highly controversial back in those days because no brands were sort of trekking into that world, I guess, of same sex or even same sex marriage, because of course it wasn't accepted here in Australia at that time. So, we were breaking the rules and really showing women that, they could make their own way there and really empowering them on lots of different fronts. And if fashion was helping them to bring that to life, then that was great. And we hoped that we could become part of their journey.
Yeah. So you then went on to co-found Two Birds Talking, which was a PR agency with a friend of yours. At this stage, how present was social media? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but before social media, it was a very much simpler landscape of magazines, TV, radio. Now you've got social media platforms, you've got podcasts, YouTube. Anybody can create an outlet, a media outlet. So how has that changed your job and how you operate?
Yes, in 2006, when I started Two Birds Talking with Amy, there was no social media. There was none. In fact, we were still on Blackberries. If anyone remembers Blackberries back in the day with the little rolly thing in the middle.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, print online, I mean, faxes had just sort of stopped, so that's crazy to think that the world has shifted so much in that short time frame from 2006 to now. Social media, we could see it coming. We certainly knew it was coming. I think Amy and I were like one of the first people in Australia, along with Husey, to actually have a Twitter account. I remember back then that was sort of, and we were like, what's this Twitter thing going on? This is crazy. But I don't think ever in our wildest dreams could we have imagined back then that social media would have evolved into what it did today. I mean, Pinterest sort of started off with a bit of a bang, and that was like, oh, this is interesting, but it's just pretty images, and how's that going to work for PR? And then, and obviously Facebook was there too, but then Instagram sort of really changed the landscape. But, I think Instagram has really sort of only started to be taken seriously, even in the last sort of 2 to 3 years. I think it has taken a while for people to understand that it should be part of a marketing strategy, and it shouldn't be overlooked. It is a very, very important part of what we do, and it should be part of your marketing wheel.
Some of the really big name influencers have audiences that are bigger and larger than magazine readerships, which is just so crazy to think. So what's the difference between working with a magazine and working with an influencer?
It's different. It's very different. PR and editorial has the credibility behind it because it's not paid. So essentially, PR is free editorial in a magazine or a newspaper or on TV or whatnot. And look, usually that editorial comes from the relationships that you have with the media. So you need those relationships to get the results. Don't get me wrong. So there is a sense of sort of power there in terms of how we can influence media to say, hey, no, this is great. But of course, making sure that we've got the angles, which makes it consumer newsworthy as well. With an influencer, look, there's different ways that you can work it. Depending on their followers, some influencers are paid. Obviously, the top tier influencers are definitely paid for their roles. And I find that if you have an influencer that's really skilled in a certain lane, whether it's fashion, lifestyle, homewares, beauty, whatever it might be, they can actually bring your brand to life with their credibility. So similar to a journo who would write about you, is having this influencer who is skilled in that lane, maybe not so from a media perspective, but can certainly talk to their viewers around your brand, because that's what they talk about every day. So and it can be tiered. Sometimes influencer seeding is for free, so you'll see brands sending out a lot of product out to influencers who will then post stories or do a grid post or whatever it might be. And then there's obviously paid campaigns as well. So but we're seeing more and more now where, the paid campaigns are being shown, so people can actually see when it is being paid. And, I think consumers are smart these days, that they understand that there are influencers out there who are getting paid for jobs, and it really is a new form of advertising. So we just need to keep that in check. And as long as people understand that there is like a payment form, it's no different though to looking at a billboard or a double page spread in a magazine, right? So it's all new. We're in such a shifting, changing world on the media landscape. It's exciting, but it can be a little bit of a grey zone in some areas. So, yeah.
I think that's a gripe that I've had. You don't get a model who's modeled on a TV commercial or on a billboard. It doesn't say in the corner that she was paid for her work. That confuses me a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I know I have these conversations daily, and I think until we really sort of get some laws into place, I totally agree with you. It's like, but then is it just in our psyche that we've seen advertising for such a long time in newspapers and on TV, and it's just like, oh, well, there's the ad and I'm just used to it, and so it becomes part of our daily routine. Whereas I think because it is new in the Instagram space, that a lot of people are still sort of finding their feet and accepting what they believe is, right or wrong or whatever. But look, I honestly think in like 5 years' time, there probably will be more rules in place, but it will become very much accepted that this is the new advertising. And, except we've got real people telling us the story versus models on billboards. So
which is different. Exciting because it's real.
100%. I mean, all of the talent that I work with here in the Dream Team, every job that we do has to have relevance to their life, and there are a lot of jobs that come in where we say, no, it's not going to work. And we definitely build a brand for the talent. So we're not just taking on lots of jobs. I certainly know, or have seen, I should say, a lot of influencers that I can just tell they're doing it perhaps for money without actually it being right for their brand. And I think that's the issue. Like, do it where it's right, that you are building a brand. You're building a brand for sustainability. You're building it to educate people. You're building it to, you know, give back in some way. But if you're just there to sort of take the cash, that's when it can start feeling a bit icky, I think.
Can you tell me a bit more about why you decided to depart Two Birds and create One Day Dream?
Yeah, so Amy and I had worked together for 9 years, so we've been together for a long time. And I think, you know, having a business is hard work, and I always say that to anyone who's got their own business. It's absolutely is hard work. And I think for me, I'd gone away, had a baby, came back, and the vision for me around fast fashion, because I'd been at Sportsgirl, and then we did a lot of fast fashion at Two Birds. My passion wasn't there anymore. It had sort of shifted, and I'd always loved beauty. I'd always loved beauty. And I think after having Billie, I probably even indulged in beauty a little bit more because it made me feel good after having a bubba, and I could do skincare and masks, and you know what it's like.
Yeah.
And so so I came back and I sort of looked at where the business was, and I sort of started to grow, I guess, the beauty business within Two Birds, and then the fashion arm was going. But we just, at the end of the day, we just thought that it was better to sort of separate and do our own thing. And sometimes after 9 years, you know, you just have to say, let's end on a high versus, you know, anything else. And I think that can happen across the board. And Amy still runs Two Birds, and that company will always be so close to my heart. I mean, I'm so proud of where that brand goes. You still speak to people these days and they're like, oh my God, Two Birds Talking, such a great business. And you know, it was fun. We sort of hit the ground running at 27 years of age, I think we were when we started that brand, and sort of dived in. You know, we really went in eyes wide shut, not eyes wide open, and built the brand to where it is, you know, to where it was. I think in 2015 when we actually separated, and it was, you know, it was really tough. I guess it's like going through a separation for anyone. It's really hard.
Yeah.
But I think it was best for both of us, and you know, now we're both doing our thing.
Yeah. So how else did motherhood change your relationship with your career and your identity?
A lot. A lot. I mean, from being very, I guess, self-centered and not having much else to worry about as such, to now having a little person and juggling the balance of what was going on with the workplace. Yeah, I was really thrown. I don't think I probably took enough time out. I only had 6 months away from the business, but I did tune out for that 6 months. I did sort of tune off, and I don't know whether that was the right decision either, looking back. Also not feeling yourself, and I just wasn't probably in the best headspace. I don't know whether it was postnatal depression or not, but it almost feels like a fog, you know, like looking back now, I can almost say that it actually felt like quite a fog that I can't remember. I feel like it was a blur until Billie was like about 3, which is just crazy to say, but I do hear women tell me that. And I think if you go through trauma as such, there is this method that happens in the brain where you just like block out, you know, what happened. So yeah, it did. It took me a long time to sort of get back on my feet. And I think we were talking about it at one stage too, Jordy, about feeling worthy again, to feel like I could come back after having a baby and feel like I could do this again and feel confident. Just because I changed, you know, so much. And then I had 2 miscarriages after Billie as well. So that sort of changed, you know, the landscape a lot too, in terms of where my head was. But, you know, we move on, and lots of women have gone through it. But yeah, I've never really spoken about that, but I think it definitely did change me. And then when One Day Dream, when that opportunity was there, I thought, yeah, I'm going to go for it. I have a different mindset now. I have a different vision for how I want the business to run. I was really enjoying beauty. You know, we could see opportunities there. And then, you know, obviously then the talent arm started. So about building dreams. And I think even, you know, calling the business One Day Dream, I always knew that I wanted to help people create their dreams. I probably just hadn't actually seen myself that it was going to be in the talent arena as well. So, that was sort of how it all evolved.
Yeah. And so how old was Billie when you created One Day Dream?
So she was 2.5. Like, what was I thinking? Honestly, like looking back, Oh my God, what was I thinking? Um, we're now going into our 6th year, which is incredible. So, but I think those first couple of years, there's so much hard work going into building a brand that you just don't even think. You just get on the treadmill and you just go, because if you don't, you'll sink.
Yeah.
So I just went and went and went. And probably only last year, well, I mean, COVID was odd. Like I can't even explain what happened with COVID. We lost a lot of business, and it shifted and changed the business to where it is today, for sure. But yeah, it's I can't remember where I was going with that. But anyway, we did, the first couple of years were full on, and we sort of built it to a good stage. And then you always have the ebbs and flows. It's always up and down. And I think we're going to have a great 6th year anyway, which is so. And I can't believe I'm talking about 6 years. Like, if I look at Two Birds, I was there for 9, and I'm already 6 at One Day Dreams. So it happens very fast.
You mentioned before that you wish that you'd sort of kept your toe dipped in the business a little bit.
Yeah.
It just made me think, when I gave birth to Evie, I was doing social media, just freelance work at the time. And I picked up a little freelance job doing community management, 2 hours a night. And I would just do that when I was breastfeeding her, but it was keeping me stimulated and maintaining a part of my identity. Was there ever a part of you that thought, I don't want to go back to work?
It's interesting. I think so. I think the thing for me was, when Billie was 6 months, I was like, I can't leave this little person. How can I leave it with a nanny? And we had a nanny at the time. Like, how can I do this and actually then be able to think straight at work? Because my mind was always, somewhere else. I don't think I ever thought, no, I don't want to. I think I was like, oh God, how am I going to get back into this? How do I get my mojo back on? Because in PR and events and everything that we were doing, we're constantly on the whole time. We rarely turn off. And that's all through the night. That's over the weekend. My phone is constantly bip, 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 ding, ding, ding. It's just how it sort of rolls. And if you have events coming up, you work through all sorts of hours throughout the night and mornings and whatnot, just to get it done. And things change a lot. So it wasn't that I didn't. I think it just made me reassess what I was doing, maybe in that fast fashion part of what we were doing at Two Birds. I think I just sort of had enough. Was just sort of done for me. So I needed a new challenge, for sure.
Do you think being a working mum, and you're so career driven, do you think running your own business makes it harder or easier when you're a mum?
Well, you never switch off when you've got your own business. So, but you can you sort of have the flexibility. So, you can sort of see them swim or see them play tennis or whatever it is. You do have that flexibility. But then again, there's going to be times where you're at home and that you're working and you can't be with your child. So, and there's always sacrifices. I say to anyone who wants to start their own business, don't believe that there are no sacrifices. There's major sacrifices, and there's major decisions to be had when you start your own business. So yeah, I think that, I forgot what your question was now. I have to go back. Oh my God. There's definitely sacrifices.
Easier, but I think you're right in terms of having the freedom of, if you want to go see Billie at her swimming carnival, you can.
That's right. Yeah. But then I also think that, workplaces, and especially at One Day Dream, I'm finding with my team, I give them far more flexibility now than, say, I would have maybe 10 years ago, because the world has changed. We can work from home. And if they have to move houses, or if they have to go and get their nails done, or if they need to go and get their hair done, or whatever it is, I'm totally fine with that, as long as there's the balance and you get your work done. So I'm like, wherever you are, it's fine, as long as you're at meetings and you're there and you're present, you're getting the work done. I think there's an opportunity for that now. So for everyone to be able to do that.
Let's talk about PR stunts. What I find really fascinating about them is, as consumers, we're often not aware that we're consuming a stunt until the brand actually reveals itself. What is a stunt from your perspective as a PR professional, and what are some of the memorable stunts that you've worked on in your career?
So a stunt can come in a few forms. It can come as sort of a physical activation. So remember back in the day when people used to do those dances? What were those pop-up dances that used to happen?
Oh, like a, oh,
It'll come to me.
it will cut. Yeah.
I never actually did one, but I always wanted to. But
Is it a crew, a stump? Oh,
yeah, like everybody all of a sudden just gets up and dances.
yeah.
Sometimes that can be about a brand as well. There's a message behind there. I think one of the really clever stunts that I saw back in the early 2000s, or it might have been mid 2000s actually, was the launch of Witchery Man. So it was when Witchery came out and did a men's range. And YouTube was sort of big in those days. Like Instagram and Facebook weren't really on the radar as such. And the stunt was that a girl was in a cafe, they were filming her, she looked across, she saw this gorgeous boy, he leaves the cafe, leaves his jacket behind, and she's like, oh my God, you know, like this could be the love of my life, I'm going to go and grab it, and then I'm going to take people onto YouTube, I'm going to ask if anyone knows the owner of this jacket, and she sort of goes through his pockets and shows the brand, and it was so clever, like it actually really sucked a lot of people in. I think it completely sucked me in as well. I had no idea it was True Man because they hadn't actually launched it at that stage. And then a couple of days later, and I mean, you can Google this now, anyone can sort of see how this rolled out. A couple of days later, she came on, she said, oh, look, I need to sort of tell you something. I'm an actress and I'm actually working for Witchery Man, and this was to launch their new collection. And so, but she had like search for days and people were talking about it. Like, does anyone know this guy? We've got to hook these guys up.
My God.
I know, it was wild, really, really clever. And it got a huge amount of PR. And I think, so stunts have to be clever. They have to engage the viewer. The viewer has to not feel like it's a stunt. It has to feel real. So one of the things that we did recently at One Day Dream, we work predominantly in the beauty industry when it comes to PR.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we did, we had to launch Sand and Sky's Tasmanian Water Serum and also their moisturizer. And honestly, it's by far my favorite range. Like I love the Tassie water. It's divine. It's not too oily. It's really light. It's beautiful on the skin. Anyway, Martha obviously is huge within the beauty industry landscape as well. So Martha Kay from Married at First Sight. So we went to her and we said, hey, listen, would you be interested in doing a sort of stunt with us around the launch of Tassie water? We want you to sort of talk about the fact that, because it is claimed that Tasmanian water is so pure and beautiful for your skin, that you would bath in it. You get it flown in from Tassie and you're going to bath in that to keep your skin silky smooth. And she was like, I would actually probably really like to do that. As in bathe in Tassie water as well. So we certainly didn't tell Martha exactly how to shoot it. That was up to her as to how she was going to interpret that. But she took the most beautiful shot in a bathtub. And again, if you do Google it, you can see it. It blew up the internet. We are still getting the love from that PR stunt that we did, where we simply said that Martha was bathing in Tassie water. And that's how we launched, the Tasmanian water range. So things like that, sort of people were going, what, you bathe in Tassie water? What's all this about? And what's the difference between Melbourne water or Sydney water? So it sparked conversation. So when you do a stunt, you need to spark some sort of conversation. And then, of course, at the end, make sure that you always tell your viewers that what you were doing and, what you were launching. And it's not offensive. It's not like you're breaking the law or that you're doing something really, really bad, but you're just making it a little bit more interesting for people to deep dive, because there's so much information in our space now that how do we get the cut through? So stunts are a great way for cut through.
Yeah. And boyfriends of Instagram, take note, because her boyfriend took that photo.
I know, right? It is the hottest shot. Like, she just looks absolutely sensational.
Incredible.
Beautiful, like of the female body as well. Like, so there was a lot of other elements that sort of came to it, but Michael did very well. I believe it took about 2 hours to shoot. So, but we got there.
Oh, wow.
2 hours. Oh my God. Speaking of influencers, can you tell us more about the influencer division of your business?
So about 3 years ago, to be honest, a lot of people have sort of been asking me to manage them for quite some time, and I just was never really 100% sure if it was something that I wanted to do. And then an opportunity came about at the Portsea Polo years ago with Lana Wilkinson. Her and I have been friends for quite some time, and I really watched her career. She'd really grown and was doing amazing things. And I had a bit of a chat with her and said, listen, I think that you need to become a serious brand. I can see where you need to go. And I think, interestingly enough, my old fashion experience from the fast fashion side of things had sort of kicked back in again, into One Day Dream. And I just said, I think I can see where you need to go and position yourself, and what do you really want to do? You know, is this something that's going to continue, or are you going to create your own range? And anyway, we had a chat and decided to join forces. And you know, she was like, I really want to do a shoe range. So, you know, I supported her and sort of helped her get that off the ground. And, you know, she has a wonderful eye. She's just a fantastic stylist and certainly a great designer. So she was able to put that business into flow. And now that business runs with, you know, 3 or 4 staff. And she's doing, you know, exceptionally well. So it sort of started off just with the conversation. It wasn't really meant to have happened as such. And then when I started working with Lana, I had other people coming to me saying, listen, I'm sort of thinking this, I'm feeling this, could you help? And it's amazing when you have someone behind you that's supporting you to go to that next level. You know, I think if I look back in the days of maybe the acting days, I didn't have the support of mum. God bless her. I keep blaming her. She laughs now. But, you know, I didn't really have the support to say, okay, just go and do it. Give it a crack. And I think if I did, then who knows where that could have gone. And so that's very much probably my purpose, was having that lesson earlier in life to be able to give it to people, to say, when you've got the support and you keep nurturing and you keep growing someone, the opportunities are endless, because we all have the power to be able to do whatever we want to do,
Being online, everybody is contactable. So it's opened up doors for, you know, the average Joe to be able to get in contact with brands themselves. What are the benefits then of an influencer or an online personality having a manager doing that for them?
I think there's a few things. I think talking about yourself full stop is tough. I think having somebody talking about you really helps. And I think somebody else that sees things in you that you might not see is really key. I think because of the PR background and the marketing background that I've had, I've been able to probably talk to brands in a marketing manner, which has allowed them to think about the dream team in a different way as well. So perhaps this person could work this way, or have you thought about doing this with the content, or maybe we could tie this in with an editorial piece. You know, so there's a different element that comes into the way we talk to a brand than just a job. It's not just a job when you book with the dream team. It's far more of an integrated process. So I'd say that's probably a really big benefit. I think also just talking money, like, let's be honest, talking money is just awkward when you're pitching. I even know like pitching business with PR and stuff, you know, it's tough. And that's why I have a finance manager who helps me do my budgeting and chase invoices and whatnot, because I think it just detracts from the creativity and everything that we're doing when we actually focus on the money, because it's not about the money, it's about what we create. So I'd say that's probably where it comes from. I also think that when you have a manager, there's probably a bit of a different perception about you from the outside if there's a manager talking about you as well. So people are like, oh wow, she or he or they might be doing really well considering they've got a manager now. So it's, you know, it's about perception and definitely I guess allowing you to focus on what you're good at while that person helps you build your brand and build the jobs.
Yeah. So what advice would you have for women listening to this that are wanting to build their profile online, whether that be a personal brand or to support their small business? What advice would you have for them?
Yeah. Content is really what it's about. I should take my own advice. I obviously have Batch & Co, which is a spritz brand, and one of the things that we are focusing on this year is definitely, you know, content. It's what it's all about. People, the more the people get to know you, the more engaged they will be with your brand, and community engagement is really important as well. So making sure that you're talking to other people and being engaged in communities where people will see your name pop up, I think is very important. And really, if you're a business or you're trying to create a brand, make sure you stick to your lane. So even if you are someone in beauty, say, but you want to talk about homewares, just make sure that there's a beauty element involved in the homewares content, or, you know, if that makes sense. So make sure that you're always, anything that you're talking about on your Instagram goes back to a core, a fundamental core at the end of the day, for sure.
Yeah. So what do you look for when you're taking on talent?
I really look, for me, it's probably about the passion and the drive and the vision. So usually when I'm speaking to someone, they've got a really strong thought process as to where they want to go. They may have tried a lot of things that sort of haven't worked or have worked, and then we come together and we sort of build that vision piece. Now, that doesn't always happen within the first 3 months of us working together. I think sometimes it can take quite a while before you get to know each other and figure out what can work and what, you know, what can't work. And there's lots of butcher's paper and vision boards and lots of things flying around sometimes, and sometimes too much. You know, there's we'll do this. It's like, no, we need to pare it back, keep it simple. I always, that KISS strategy, you know, keep it simple strategy is so important. Yeah, absolutely. So that is still there 100%. But yeah, it's really about that. And then I also look at what else is happening within their segment. So I want to see who their competitors are, what's going on, is there opportunity, what is that person going to offer brands that perhaps brands don't have at the moment. And that just comes from my marketing head of being in a marketing position as well. So to figure out that sort of missing puzzle piece as to where that person can fit if they are going to create content for brands and be an influencer. Yeah.
How important are numbers? You know, we get really caught up in micro influencers and macro influencers and engagement and all that sort of stuff. Whereas someone with 3,000 followers might be creating the most epic content. How important is it then that they don't have 1 million followers? Like, where's the balance?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think some of the smaller followers have the most amazing content, as you say. I think there's some just incredible content creators out there that are doing a great job that might have 45,000 followers, that might have 100,000 followers, that definitely don't have in the millions.
Yeah.
Again, it has to come down to whether the brand feels that that person is the right fit for their brand, and then you can sort of create anything. And you've also got to check insights. I mean, insights change as well, like the Instagram algorithms, and it can change at times and really mix things up. So ongoing insights are really important, and we work with brands on insights from all the talent as well, so we can see what's worked, what hasn't. So yeah, I'm not sure whether the big numbers are that important in Australia. We don't have the population, but if I look at the big numbers in the States and the UK, they have very different results. So it's another grey zone of where we're going through. But I definitely think that mid-tier influencer is very strong here in Australia, 100%. So
I interviewed you pretty much this time last year, Feb 2020, and you gave us some predictions. You predicted virtual reality drones, magazines might finally take their last bow. You were correct. Instagram ads by them, and you also said that IGTV would become more powerful than ever before. Just to finish off, what are your predictions? Because you seem to be a bit of to have a really good insight. What are your predictions for 2021?
Oh, wow. Thanks for that reminder. Oh my God. I was pretty bang on. That's good. What? Oh my God. My predictions for 2021. Well, look, I still say digital advertising 100%. I think that is really key. I think the power of it popping up in your feed is still really important, along with everything else that you do with your marketing, for sure. TikTok, I reckon Reels is going to take over TikTok. I think Reels is going to be a real game changer. And I think some people are only really getting into it at the moment. So watch that space for this year. I think Reels is going to be huge for sure. Oh goodness, it's tough. Magazines are going to come back online. I think we did see the shutting of their doors a lot of them, which was terribly, terribly sad. I certainly wasn't worried about it. A lot of PRs were like, oh my God, what are we going to do now? I didn't see that at all. I saw it as an opportunity for the industry to change, and I think it needed to. So I think we'll see them come back online, and we might even get some better content by having the ability to see what happens with it coming back online, for sure. And what's my other prediction? We'll be flying by 2023. There you go. We'll be going overseas by 2023. I don't know. I can't think of the last one. Oh my goodness.
Well, that is more than okay. I have written all of those predictions down, and I'm going to see which ones come true. I'm guessing most of them if it's based on your last set. Pru, thank you so much for coming on the podcast this week. I know our listeners will have learnt so much from you and can't wait to see what's in store for One Day Dream and the Dream Team in 2021.
Thanks, Jordy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the She Does This podcast and for getting us to a #1 position on the Apple Podcasts this week. So happy and so grateful. If you have enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. I will speak to you next week.